Hello everyone, this is Helios Raven. I tell you how to do it, even if you don't care. And we're continuing on with our in-depth look into the forces of Battlefleet Gothic with the last race to be introduced in the core rulebook, which was the Ork Pirates. Now, the Ork armies, in my opinion, got a little bit of the short end of the stick here, mostly because they didn't get much. I mean, the Eldar got a lot more than they did, and out of all of them, they also didn't get much in the Armada Handbook and thereon. They only got a couple of entries in the Armada Handbook, and then that was about it. So out of all the races that were in the core rulebook, they didn't get much extra after the fact. And the way the Orks were played in this game was where the Eldar were specialized in long-distance range combat, the Orks were more specialized for close-quarters combat, which we'll see when we discuss the ships later in-depth look. And with them, they also got a lot of special rules, like the Eldar did. For one is their leadership value. The Orks actually take a -1 to their leadership value when rolled, making them have a leadership ranging from 5 to 8. Also, they had a special rule involving the all-ahead full special order. Since Orks have no problem getting the encouragement to go faster, they tend to put a plethora, that's actually what they use, of thrusters on their ships to kind of boost their speed. Basically what this meant is the Orks did not need to pass a command check to do the all-ahead full special order, but they could only roll 2d6 for the all-ahead full issue instead of 4d6. Also, when it came to boarding, Orks got a +1 to their boarding actions because they're Orks and close quarters fighting is what they do best at. They also got some extra rules for their weaponry. The first one was with their guns. The guns, what their deal was is they had no set firepower. It was actually a random dice roll that was listed underneath the vehicle's stats to determine what kind of firepower they would have when they fired their guns that turn. Granted, this allowed you to have a lot of gun power if you got really lucky on the dice roll, but this also could really screw you over and only have you with one weapon battery firepower at the time, which is one of the reasons why they're better at close quarters combat fighting, because when they get in close, the guns tend to they get their maximum dice rolls in case of the fact that they end up rolling ones on the dice chart, or 2 or 3, they get as much as they can. Also, another rule weapon with them is their torpedo launchers function the very same way, where you roll the d6, plus if there's any bonuses added on the ship stats would tell you. The one thing, though, is you could not combine torpedo servos in a squadron. So if you had 2 ships with torpedoes in them and they were squadroned together, you roll each dice roll individually, and each result is a servo of torpedoes. You couldn't wave both of them together, as with normal squads, which is one downfall. So you could end up with only 2 single torpedoes if you're really unlucky, but if you had a d6, you could get 2 6-wave turrets going in 2 directions, which is pretty awesome. They also had what were called heavy guns. Heavy guns were specially designed weapon batteries where they function the same, except they do not gain a benefit for close range combat, because they had a very small range. Their guns do not take any shifts on the gunnery table for range, but to make up for this fact is they allowed it where each damage point that these particular guns inflicted caused 2. So if you got 2 hits with the Ork heavy guns, you actually ended up getting 4. And also, Orks had what were called Fightabombas. Fightabombas is actually an ordnance vehicle that functions as the fighter and the bomber at the same time. So it can either attack ordnance coming at it, or it could bombard ships. The only downside, when it attacks a ship with a bombing run, it only rolls a d3 rather than a d6. And the Orks also had special rules for their force organization within the Battlefleet Gothic rules, and that was, one, they did get warlords. Now, Ork warlord, you can have up to 1 of them for every 500 points. So if you had 1,000 points, you can have 2 warlords, and they must be assigned to a ship or a squadron. And the warlord then can have up to 2 rerolls for itself to use on its ship or its squadron that's doing. A vessel carrying a warlord doubles its boarding value, and may include up to one of the upgrades shown below on additional costs. So, already its boarding value was doubled, and you can either give his ship a Manica Gunners. This ship may re-roll the dice for firepower on the guns when it fires. Mad Mechs. The ship may re-roll the dice for damage control. Extra power fields. The shield value of the ship is increased by 1. Mecha armored boarding parties, +1 modifier on boarding. And looted torpedoes. The ship may re-roll the dice for the strength of the torpedo servos. Now, you could only purchase up to one of these upgrades, so you couldn't get them all. And you may have and you were allowed up to 6 kill cruisers, and you could have any number of escorts. And that was basically their force organization. Like I said before, the Orks were more of a close combat special force to kind of counterbalance the long-range capabilities of the Eldar. And this is going to be apparent when we talk about the ships themselves, since we'll notice none of them have any lances. And they're also they're actually one of the only ships. I could be wrong. I haven't read the Armada books yet because I'm doing this one at a time to keep focused. But this is also where we saw ships with a rear armor value, where their rear armor was different from their side or their front arc, which was interesting. And of course, it made them a little bit weaker because Orks were designed, run right into the army and pray once you get there, you destroy them all. And if the army gets behind you, they have an easier time of attacking your ships because the armor is weaker there. And that is basically it for an introduction to the Orks here, and we'll continue on with our next video when we talk about the Ork vessels. So, until next time, this is Helios Raven, signing off.